I see that our next speakers are here. Yep. Let me introduce our next speakers, and let's move to our next session. I want to introduce Ming-Xian Li from Singapore Economic Development Board, EDB, and Jesse Lim from Singapore Global Network. And they will talk about tech trends and opportunities in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Welcome on stage.
Great, thanks, Mikhail, for the introduction, and thanks for giving us the opportunity here today to be able to share more about Southeast Asia and Singapore. So my name is Ming Xuan. You can call me Ming for short. I'm the regional director from the Singapore Economic Development Board. I'll share a bit more about myself later, but feel free to link up with me at my LinkedIn address as seen, and happy to discuss even further after this presentation as well. So quickly, just to share about us, where me and Jesse, my co-speaker, comes from. We are from a government agency in Singapore that looks at the industry development and strategies for Singapore. Jesse comes from a slightly different department, which she will share more later, but I'll leave that to her and keep the excitement for later. But myself, we are actually based all over the world. So we have offices all over the world that looks at helping to attract companies to invest in Singapore. So I would say that three main goals that we look at are enhancing the general business environment in Singapore. So that's done well by my colleagues in Singapore. Next, attracting foreign investment. More my role out here, I'm actually based in Frankfurt, but I cover most of, I would say, Central and Eastern Europe, including Israel, Russia. And also looking at growing certain industry verticals that are of importance to Singapore. So I will start off by sharing a bit about the opportunities in Southeast Asia, and then zooming into Singapore and why Singapore makes sense as a market access location for Southeast Asia. You might have heard this many times, but I think Southeast Asia is projected to grow very rapidly in the next 5-10 years. Even despite COVID, we see that many of the Southeast Asian countries or the economies remain rather resilient. I mean, there is definitely some level of dip in 2020, but many are expected to recover very strongly in 2021. And this includes the major, I would say the larger economies in Southeast Asia, including Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam. And one important fact about Southeast Asia, beyond the fact that it's growing, is the fact that actually we have a very huge opportunity in terms of digital. One of the reasons is really because a lot of the population in Southeast Asia are currently still not that well connected, whether it's in terms of banking, whether it's in terms of services, and many of them are looking to look for cheaper and digital services because now the internet is much more accessible. Many of the populations, despite not being of the same middle class level as perhaps in Europe, in China, but they still own a smartphone and they have access to some of these digital services. And therefore, the digital economy is expected to grow almost 10 times over the next 5 years. And we expect to see that many more of, would say, the younger population that's growing, that is slowly becoming the next middle class in the region, to expect to consume even more digital services. And while it is a quite diversified, I would say, region, the consumer market is actually larger than India currently and close to that of coastal China, which gives companies a lot of opportunities. And if you look at the median income of Southeast Asian economies, we are currently about 10 years behind China. And it's still on a growth trajectory. So it means that sometime in the next few years, you expect to see the kind of boom that's happening over the last 10 years in China, or at least that's what we believe, which means a lot more opportunities to offer new services, new products in this region. And from a startup perspective, I think it's not surprising to see that even despite the pandemic, actually funding remains quite good in Southeast Asia. In fact, I think for 2020, there were still quite substantial deals that's being done out of Southeast Asia. And that's really because I think people see the growth and the value and the kind of difference in products that startups in that region bring. So why Singapore? And I must say that this is an effort that we have done over many years, and with the help of, I would say, many of our partners. So over the last 15 years or 10 years or so, we have started already looking at how we can build up the startup ecosystem in Singapore. This includes enabling various scale accelerators in Singapore. We have currently about, I think, more than 100 of them, depending on how you look at it. More than 300 venture capital having some kind of presence in Singapore, including EDB ourselves. We also have an investment arm. There are also a lot of MNCs that have come to Singapore in the past, and they have set up regional headquarters, which makes it a great location, therefore, for startups to connect with a lot of them across various industries. And many of them have also started looking at their own venture setup in Singapore as well. And lastly, I think we still remain one of the most highly competitive in terms of talent in Singapore. So many of our universities are topped in Asia. And they have also started generating various IPs and even startups through their own efforts. And lastly, I must say that many of the top connecting events are in Singapore as well. So one of the more famous ones will be Singapore FinTech Festival. It's the largest FinTech event, I think, in the world, or at least in Asia. And together with that, there's also the Singapore Week of Innovation and Tech and other various events that various Singapore agencies help to organize to bring together players from all over the world to Singapore. And Singapore is also helping to drive the digitalization and tech ecosystem to further our own economic growth. But at the same time, we see this as an opportunity for companies to develop it in Singapore and then selling the services or the products to the rest of the region. In fact, you will see that many of the large unicorns in the region, for example, like Gojek and so on, they are actually having some level of presence in Singapore because they want to tap on our tech ecosystem and the tech capabilities. So in terms of projection-wise, I think we are seeing that across the various, I would say, growth or key sectors that people see growth in the digital economy, things like cybersecurity, AI, Internet of Things, and immersive media, which refers to AR, VR. We do see a very strong double-digit CAGR, or at least high single-digit CAGR. And lastly, I think to enable continuous or at least to continue to be competitive in this scene, we realize that being advanced in our regulatory approach is very important. So one of the, I would say, leading areas for Singapore being a hub location and having many banks and financial institutions is to ensure that we have a very advanced and open regulatory approach in terms of the financial sector. So MAS, our Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is a regulator, both a regulator and also an industry development office, they look very actively to work with companies in the fintech ecosystem, whether it's startups or even large companies, to open up in terms of trying to enable innovation in Singapore. And this would mean providing regulatory sandbox, streamlining certain guidelines to enable some of the new innovative technology to be deployed. And we hope that this is also one way that we are also encouraging other countries in the region to also look at how they can slowly open up their regulation for such innovation. Lastly, I thought to just share an interesting story I would say a startup that have actually managed to set up in Singapore, despite the whole COVID environment last year. I think it's a very interesting one. Feel free to check out their story at our EDB website, as you can see here. You will probably find it quite easily if even without this link. Just go to our website and look for some of our insights pieces. They have actually managed to find their way to Singapore despite not being able to be physically there the whole of last year, and to look at finding various business opportunities, to even setting up an entity in Singapore without physically being there. I think all this hopefully attests to the fact that Singapore is a very open place to do business, that is easy for you to set up something in Singapore, and that there are various opportunities that whether it is EDB or other government agencies or even accelerators provide to help you to access Singapore and also the region as a market. So I think I have put some quotes. Feel free to read them on the slides, but it just shows how I think startup founders were impressed at how they can do business, and that we are really quite advanced in terms of technology and want to adopt it. So if you are now interested, I hope that my short message was a good start for you to think more about why Singapore, why Southeast Asia. How you can then collaborate is tapping on some of the existing platforms that we have done or curated. So one of them is the Open Innovation Platform. It's organized mainly by our IMDA, our Infocoms Media Development Authority. It is our digital regulator and as well as industry developer in this sector. And the whole purpose of this Open Innovation Platform is to bring together both the MNCs and the startups, and even sometimes government sectors, in order to run certain POCs and certain problem statements and find new solutions. Another one is IPI, another government links organization that is supported by Enterprise Singapore. So they help to also match problem statements between local companies and overseas companies by putting together like a database of the existing technologies that's in the ecosystem, and also then matching directly on sometimes a one-to-one basis, sometimes a many-to-many basis with some of the problem statements or technology solutions that companies are looking for. And lastly, there are also many open innovation intermediaries, as I mentioned, as part of the whole accelerator ecosystem. In fact, also many of the, like I mentioned, multinational companies in Singapore also hold their own hackathon, their own open innovation platforms in Singapore. And of course, there are various grants, tax, and supporting, I would say, incentives that we enable startups in Singapore. These are some of them. I'll ask the organizers to share the slides with everyone post this event, so you don't need to copy down everything. But this is just to give you a sense that there are a lot of different initiatives that the government is doing in order to enable startups as well. And lastly, I think what my colleague have done is also to curate on quite a regular basis on the kind of business opportunities in Southeast Asia, whether it's terms of call for proposal, open innovation, hackathons, and so on. Here's the link. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn because it's also on my LinkedIn as well. So you can easily find it on my profile page. And it's, I think, updated at least once every quarter. So it will be an exciting place to really look at, what are the opportunities in the next few months in the Southeast Asia region. Lastly, of course, if you're thinking about now, how can you set up in Singapore, how can you access some of these opportunities, feel free to go to our website, follow our Facebook page, our LinkedIn page, because we continuously pump out new information about opportunities in Singapore and Southeast Asia. There are also various guides in terms of how to set up in Singapore, how to hire the right people in Singapore. I think my colleague Jesse will go into a bit more about the talent piece as well later on. But I would say that if you want to understand more, I'm just touching really the tip of the iceberg. Do come to our EDB website, sign up for our Insights newsletter, and I'm sure you will find even more information. So thanks so much. As I've mentioned, if you want to sign up for Insights, just use this QR code. You can immediately scan it now, and then you can sign up. If not, just hit me up on LinkedIn, connect with me, or even drop me an email as seen on this slide, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have with regards to Singapore or the Southeast Asia region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ming-Sheng. Very helpful, very interesting. Well, I would love also to attract the attention of our audience to the message of Julian's team in the chat, sharing a database of accelerators and investors which are currently active, and also other resources. We will also, I think, follow up with the links, so no worries about that. Now we would switch to the presentation of Jesse, and then we would have a Q&A for both Ming-Sheng and for Jesse as well. Jesse, could you share the screen, please?
Yeah, let me just do that quickly. Yeah, so it should be on the screen right now. So thank you, Dina and Ming-Sheng, for introducing me earlier. So good morning, everyone. I'm Jesse, the regional lead for Continental Europe with the Singapore Global Network, which is also a part of the Singapore Economic Development Board. As Ming-Sheng shared with you on the tech trends, opportunities, and also a bit on the landscape in Singapore and Southeast Asia, I'd like to complement that by sharing with you a community that you can get plugged into, which is the Singapore Global Network. So about the Singapore Global Network, or SGN for short, it is an international community of overseas Singaporeans, friends of Singapore, who are those including those who have lived, worked, and or studied in our city-state before, as well as fans of Singapore, those who have not been in Singapore but would like to find out more. So the team driving SGN is all about building relationships with individuals, partners, and community groups to widen and strengthen this network in order to better facilitate exchange of ideas, resources, and even talents. Many of our offerings also provide opportunities for our members to connect with one another. Here's elaborating a bit more on what we offer. So firstly, we offer access to a professional community that spans across country and industry. This includes an exciting and vibrant tech community known as Tech Plus 65, as well as virtual gatherings where entrepreneurs and founders across Europe, America, and Southeast Asia can network. We definitely have more of such business networking opportunities lined up, and we hope that you will be able to join us. So second, we offer a social community as well, not just within your area of residence, but also across borders. We want to connect you to a larger community of fellow entrepreneurs and founders like yourselves who might be interested in scaling up to Singapore and Southeast Asia. We also offer resources for you to understand Singapore and Southeast Asia a bit better. We produce regular content on life in Singapore and the region, spanning business stories of startups making headway into Southeast Asia to inspirational features on women in the Southeast Asia tech scene, even guides on the best food in Singapore. If you're considering a move, we also have a relocation guide just for you. While we certainly have plans and programs that cater to our members from varying backgrounds, we are also open to feedback and ideas. So do feel free to get in touch with us to find out more and tell us what you think. And here are some visuals of our offerings. As a member, you will be the first to know about events that we organize, not just Switch and Singapore FinTech Forum that Ming-Sheng mentioned earlier that are organized by our partners, Startup Singapore. We also organized the Singapore Tech Forum that was hosted last year. So the Singapore Tech Forum 2020 was a 4-day virtual conference bringing together the top movers and shakers in tech, business, and government to share about the digital growth market and potential in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Other than the Singapore Tech Forum, we also host smaller exclusive events with various partners. Just 2 days ago, we ran a successful webinar with the Singapore Chamber of Commerce in Indonesia to share about Indonesia's growth prospects and opportunities for investment. We also keep our members updated through Scoop, our e-newsletter on key happenings in Singapore and in the region. So do visit our portal at singaporeglobalnetwork.gov.sg and take a look at the content we create. We cover stories from business to lifestyle and also provide useful content such as the relocation guide I mentioned earlier, even family-friendly resources about Singapore to entertain your children with. So that's it for my very brief overview of the Singapore Global Network. Do connect with us and visit our website to find out more, or you can join it by scanning the QR code on the screen. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you are as excited as we are to hear from the lineup of speakers. I'll now hand the time back to Dina to conclude.
Thank you, Jesse. We actually have a number of questions to both Ming-Sheng and Jesse as well. So the first one is how the startups could enter Singapore in COVID condition, knowing that restriction is strict. You want to take this one?
I can take this. So I think if I've got the question correctly, you're asking, without traveling to Singapore, how can you enter Singapore, right? So there are many ways to do it. I think one of the ways that we have helped some of the startups last year was organizing event called the Singapore Europe Innovation Partnership Forum, whereby we brought together actually companies from Southeast Asia and startups from Europe to do some kind of business matching, I would say. I think in a very brief way, maybe just to say that. With that, I think some of them found some business opportunities, and then they were able to kickstart some projects. And like I said, you don't need to be physically there to actually set up an entity if you want to. In fact, there are various services you can find online. You can find some of the services on the EDB's portal as well through our connection concierge. And it can easily help you set up an entity in Singapore first. Then of course, when it comes to them moving into Singapore, if you really want to move there, actually EDB also does help to facilitate certain entry as well. When it comes to very important business meetings that you have to do. Currently, if you see, we have also just launched the Connect at Changi services, which means that actually business people can fly into Singapore while they cannot so-called enter the rest of the country. There's actually an area near the airport that allows you to arrange for business meetings with anyone in Singapore. Yeah. So maybe that's kind of a short answer to your question, but if you're still interested specifically, feel free to check out some of the materials on our website.
Thank you. Another one is about the regulation of blockchain and cryptocurrencies. So is there any news, I think that means the resources about that, about the regulation of blockchain and cryptocurrencies technologies in Singapore?
Okay, I'm not personally an expert in regulation area, but I think that for the area of blockchain, there are already quite a few companies in Singapore that are looking at this, at least to my understanding. I can share with you after this a website. It's called Open Notes. It's actually put together by one of the accelerator in Singapore, whereby actually they curate materials on blockchains and startups in this area on this website and bring together the community. So it's kind of an online community platform. Perhaps what I can suggest is that you take a look at that, and maybe you can find some information about regulation in this area. I mean, and of course it includes cryptocurrency because the technology, the backbone technology behind it is quite similar. Maybe let me type that in the chat and you can take a look at it. Yeah.
Thank you. Then I will switch to Jesse. Jesse, the question is to you. Do you have Singapore-related events held online or in other countries?
We do. We certainly do have many Singapore-related events. It might not necessarily just be Singapore-related. I think one misconception that people might have is that the Singapore Global Network is only for Singaporeans, but we want to be more inclusive than that. So when we host our virtual events, now they are currently virtual because of COVID regulation, so that's why most are virtual. We try to bring in the ASEAN Southeast Asia element to it as well. So for example, coming up, we do have many theme webinars planned. The first being something to do with International Women's Day coming up in March. So we are hoping to host an event that brings together female professionals and also male allies to talk about working across Europe, America, and Southeast Asia. So we do have many of those coming up, and I would suggest that you join our mailing list to find out more.
Already done that yesterday. Excited to join you. So another question, is it possible to find a business partner or any business contacts at your events? Jesse, that's for you.
Oh, that's for me. So for business contacts at the event, we do have networking element built into our events as well. Although we are considered SGN, the EDBA marketing team also hosts many of such events that have networking components to it, where personally I've met a lot of such contacts. So I do hope that those kind of events will be quite useful for you. Actually, just to add on to the question on blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies that mentioned answered earlier. So for Singapore Global Network, we try to provide a more personal approach. So we do feature stories from people who are in Singapore that might be in blockchain or cryptocurrency as well. So one of the links that I've shared in the chat is one of the stories profiling one of such founders. So you do check them out as well.
Okay, thanks a lot for sharing. Ming-Xuan, I think that's one for you. What's the industry concentration interest that is trending of EDB interest?
I would say our interest is very, very diverse, because if you look at the Singapore's economy, apologies I didn't share a slide on that, but we are a very diverse economy. Of course, for us, we focus mainly on the manufacturing and the exportable services sector, but that doesn't mean that there are no other agencies that look at the other sectors as well. So I would say almost every sector is looked after. Across manufacturing and exportable services, we have more than 10 to 12 different industries that we look at. In fact, even outside of this, we are interested as long as we think that, you know, the business itself fits I would say the economic opportunities and also, of course, the cost model in Singapore. I think one thing I think everyone might know, Singapore is not exactly a low cost location or a cheap location, definitely. So I think you must find value in coming to Singapore. If not, I think you will definitely find it quite expensive, especially when as a startup to come to Singapore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question I would address to both of you. So what are the biggest conference or events that happen now in COVID time? Could you recommend to take part of for AI startups?
I think Jesse can add on after this, but my understanding for AI wise, the best platform will really be the Singapore Week of Innovation and Tech. Because that is where all the deep tech startups come together. It normally happens in Q4 of the year, so fourth quarter. Currently, it's still unsure whether it will be online, offline, but definitely there will be some level of hybrid model to it. Last year, it was all online because obviously we couldn't do anything offline. Currently, although however the date is not really decided, so I think you can keep a lookout for it. Yeah, I think Jesse has other events as well, so maybe let her share.
Actually, the main one is really, as Ming-Xuan rightfully pointed out, would be the Switch event. I've also pasted a link to a calendar of events for SG Innovate that are themed around AI. For SGN itself, we are also in the works of planning. Details aren't out yet, but we do have a few tech team webinars coming up. So one of them could be on robotics in the age of AI and social interaction as well. So stay tuned.
Great, thank you. We still have the question coming up. Is there aerospace industry developing, and is it possible to get funds for a drone air taxi project at the stage of technology demonstrator?
No, thanks for sharing. I think for technology demonstration, what we help with is more in terms of regulation, opening up the airspace, finding certain infrastructure available, for you to be able to take off and land. But in terms of just pure funding wise, I don't think there is one at the moment. But what we have done or to help Volocopter, which is one of the passenger drone or passenger air taxi from Germany in, I think back in 2019, if I'm not wrong, was really to help them, find a good event to launch or to trial their Volocopter and get all the regulators in. And even to this day, I think if you have seen some of the latest announcement, we are in close collaboration with them to help with their commercial launch in Singapore. So a lot of help pulling together the various stakeholders to help them get the right airspace and all this, and also introducing them to certain partners in Singapore. For example, one of our government agencies, Sentosa, they are a government agency that looks at curating and governing this so-called holiday island that we have in southern part of Singapore. So they have a theme park, they have various hotels there, and one of the things that they are exploring is whether using air taxi could provide a touristic route of the southern part of Singapore. So we provide certain such opportunities, link up for companies, but not so much from a funding perspective, just for trials. Yeah.
Great answer. We also have another one. So which companies are eligible for the government support? I think, Min-Sean, it's related to your slide in the presentation where you said—
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Which
companies are eligible for the government support?
I see. I think as long as you have a presence in Singapore, you can be eligible. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a local company or require a certain level of shareholding. But what we do require is, of course, you have a legal entity in Singapore so that we firstly can award any kind of incentive to you. Secondly, of course, in terms of the support of the activities that we do, we only support activities that is done out of Singapore. If you are doing certain activities back in your home country and you're just selling services in Singapore, unfortunately, we don't support some of these activities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jesse, another question is to you. How is it possible to build the right relationship with local citizens? Well, I'm not sure you can answer that, but
so it is the question on how to build direct relationships with local citizens. I'm assuming you are not in Singapore, if that's the case. So there are a few ways to connect, I guess, because SGN is a platform. What we hope to do is connect people across borders. So if you are not in Singapore, then we do have currently still virtual networking events. This might be SGN-led, this might also be EDB-led, where business leaders across Singapore, Europe, we just did one, I think, a couple of weeks ago on Europe-Singapore business networking event. So those are some events where you can meet people. If you're an expat dialing in from Singapore at this time, you might actually be interested to join our physical event when that happens again. So we do not just professional, but also social events based in the region that we operate in. So for Singapore, it would be, we don't know what's coming up yet, but we will let you know when events are firm.
Okay. I also think the question kind of touches the cultural differences. So whether there are any and what should you assume when you do negotiate with the local representatives. Is it the case for Singapore, or is it mostly related to Southeast Asia overall?
I'm assuming the question is about cultural differences between Singapore and Southeast Asia, or are you
Europe, Europe,
Europe.
And Singapore and Europe and Southeast Asia.
The way I see it would be Europe is a very diverse region, similar to Southeast Asia. And there are many ways which you cannot generalize the culture of an entire region, because all the countries in Southeast Asia, for example, are so diverse. So what we hope to do at the Singapore Global Network is really to try and bring a bit of that awareness and cultural sensitivity, awareness of different operating environments, if not just culture, to the work we do. So by connecting in the future, more, not just Singaporean, but ASEAN nationals, as well as European nationals who might have a link to Singapore, we then foster this connection and awareness of different cultures. I'm not sure if I answered that question, but
you can never answer this question in 1 minute.
Yeah,
2 minutes. Like there are so many.
It deserves a discussion.
Yes, yes.
Maybe just to add on to Jessie's answer, definitely a lot of diversity in Southeast Asia. I think there are many times we compare it similarly to the Europe region, you know, whereby there's, I mean, you can see them as similar, but you can also see them as different. I think it's the same in Southeast Asia, I would say, in terms of complexity, in terms of culture. And definitely, I think I saw also some questions about, you know, talent wise and working culture wise, definitely also very different, cutting across the different regions. You can imagine that someone in Singapore even of let's say, I mean, not to be of any discriminatory here, but of the same race, you know, of coming from the Malay race, but compared to a Malay in the Malaysian region is very different as well. So I would say that most importantly, in our discussion with many companies, when it comes to entering different markets, it's very important to have people who knows the market well. Of course, it would be best you can find someone that is in Singapore who came from Malaysia or came from Indonesia, but if you can't, actually finding someone local is never too difficult. I think it's just about looking in the right places, and actually there are many platforms that allows you to come and connect with some of these people, as long as you find the right group. Yeah, I think it really depends on your company as a whole. It's very hard to generalize to say, you know, yeah, how best to approach this. Maybe that's how I put it. Yeah. So it's most importantly is to find the right partners, whether it's come from like accelerator or I think especially accelerators, because they sometimes can put you in touch with like-minded startups, and that's when then you can hear from their experience how they've done it and how it might work or might not work for you. Yeah.
Well, as you already touched the topic of the talents, we have the last question, and I think that's all for now. So how tough is to find technical personnel in Singapore, and can you recommend any job fairs?
Jesse, you want to try and answer this, or should I do it?
Who want to be the first, Jesse?
Yeah, how difficult is it to find technical, I would assume tech talent in Singapore and in Europe or in the region? I would say that there is a pool of tech talent out there. And I don't personally feel that it's very difficult, but someone in, I don't think I'm very experienced in that sector in order to comment too much about it. But perhaps if you meet someone who has actually started up shop in Singapore, you might be able to hear more personal experiences from them. Ming-Xuan, do you want
so
to
maybe
add
I
on?
think to add also to add on to what I've shared previously, there are various actually, I mean, talking about entering markets and also talent wise, there are also various pockets of let's say Europeans living in Singapore. So many of them form their own community. So the Germans will have their own, The French also their own. In fact, the Nordics and many other countries we have seen, they all have their own communities. I'm sure you can find one for the Russians as well. And many of them go through this community to better understand, the ecosystem, even finding the right talent, recruiting the right talent. In terms of platforms wise, there are obviously many job fairs and job portals available online. Even actually the government, we have our own job portals as well. But it's also not too difficult to actually, I would say, post some of, if you are in the right circles, to post some of this thing through various online platforms and in order to find them. I would think that the easiest is to start with your own community, perhaps. Yeah, and the various chamber of commerces, they are usually very helpful in terms of helping you to connect at least with the community on the ground. And Singapore is really very diverse. You will see that if you come to Singapore, we have people from all over the world, and people are generally very open to talk to someone from another country or so. And yeah, I think you will not find a lack of diverse culture in Singapore compared to other countries in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just to add on, I feel that there's no lack of tech talent and there's no lack for tech talent demand as well. We do know that a lot of people are hiring. It's just a matter of really matching the right person to the right role. So one of the platforms SGN has would be our mid to senior tech professional community, which is Tech Plus 65. So it is hosted on Slack, and it is really an organic platform for people in tech to connect with one another, be it for opportunities, be it for roles, or be it to just exchange ideas. So that is something to consider as well.
And also across the universities, just to share some statistics, at least about, I would say about 10 to 12,000 engineering or technical students are being trained on a yearly basis. So that's very easily find fresh tech talent from the pool. In fact, many of them go through, like I mentioned, the startup incubation arm from the universities. And maybe if you get in touch with them, some of them might be even interested, to collaborate or even join. So there are various opportunities through the universities as well for you to find fresh tech talent in Singapore. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Very insightful and detailed answer. And we also have a lot of links shared. So we will also, I think, send it to the audience. Michael, I will you go further.
Okay.
Again, Jesse and Ming, thanks a lot for joining.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.